and these words have been kind of abused, faith, doubt, so that they're about like creeds or something, or belief systems. But if you take out the belief system idea from it, there's a way in which faith is our salvation, in the sense that as soon as if we turn toward existence or life with a sense of trust that what is happening in our lives is the means for us to go deeper, as soon as we have that trust, that faith, that we are being saved through the trials, tribulations, joys, happiness, everything that happens in our lives as it unfolds, as if there's a cosmic intelligence, whether you call it God, or you call it Buddha, or you call it the Tao even, but there's an intelligence underneath it. When you have faith in that, then you're disposed towards life in such a way that that shows up. Because how could you, when you have that frame, that faith, that trust, that how everything is then interpreted in such a way in which it's for your own good. It's a kind of a cheating, right? Because, you know, you can't, can you prove it? No, but that's what faith is. And faith becomes your salvation, because it doesn't even matter what it looks like. Like, I'm going through horrible suffering now. This is ultimately the means for my further embodiment, for my further deepening, for my further, you know, and sometimes it can be very, very, very difficult. And your faith is tested or in tatters, and you can't, but you have to return to that, because what is the alternative? The alternative is doubt. And I'm not talking about belief systems, but in life, it's victimization. I am in a horrible situation, and I'm alone, and it's helpless, and it's horrible. And that indeed is the experience of doubt. That is the experience with that frame. No faith. No faith to keep going. It isn't about whether it's true or not in the usual silly way that people speak about true or not true. It's ridiculous. It has nothing, it doesn't even mean anything, true or not true, at that level. How could you prove any of that? It isn't about that. It's about a way of orienting yourself toward existence. One founded in faith or trust, deep trust, or deep in trusting, as Pure Land Buddhists talk about, deep, or particularly Japanese Pure Land Buddhism talks about deep in trusting. That deep in trusting, you're at home in the universe. You are being saved. You already are saved. You're at home in life. And everything that is an obstacle, an obscuration, a difficulty, a horrible thing, it's all kind of grist for the mill. It's a means to an end. It isn't what it appears to be. I remember once when I was in, one of the times I was in India, I began reading Hindu popular literature, which I wasn't into. I was into high philosophy, but I went to a train. I was at a train station, and there was a magazine of Hindu, very regular Hindu religion, and I was just curious. I was reading it, and there was this beautiful, gorgeous kind of simple idea that between your your birth and your death, your death and your next birth, Shiva sees has all your karmas in front of him. Like your soul's there, and all of your karmas from your whole last lives are there. And Shiva's looking at it. Shiva's like, what can I do? You got these karmas. They have to come to fruition next life. So what does Shiva do? He sits there and he goes, okay, what is the order and sequence in which these karmas, the results of these karmas will happen, so that that person, their soul, will be in the best position to wake up, so that it'll be the best possible life for them, for their spiritual realization, for them to go through. So they have to have this much suffering, and they're going to have this much joy. But if they have it at the beginning of their life in this proportion, then it'll have this outcome. But if it's at the end of their life, so he sets it all up. So now that he sends you on your way. So that what it means is that what it's saying is every person's life is designed specifically for you individually to have the best means for your spiritual development. Like, brilliant. Just brilliant. Because that notion is exactly the perfect way, from my perspective anyway, just me speaking, who knows, but from my perspective, a perfect way of orienting yourself towards your existence. And it's not easy to do that. We struggle with it. I do. It's hard. When it's hard, it's hard. But then, to see the uselessness of hitting your head against the wall. And in my own case, it's usually when I have a little bit of a lump, then I go, I'm resisting what is. I'm wishing that I had a different life than I have. And it's useless. And it's the mind in a pattern that it learned when it was very young, and has nothing to do with the way the universe actually is. And then, I'm reminded of my teacher in India, Poonja, and his teacher, Ramana Maharshi, and they would always be saying, just be quiet. Just be quiet. Just let go of that idea. Can't always do it. You have to give your emotions their due. You have to give your feelings their due. You have to give your complaints their due. So that's the deep feminine. You have to allow all of your complaining, all of your frustration, and let yourself feel it. But you're not required to do that when it's so evident that it's not doing you any good. I mean, for a lot of us, we repress our fears, our anger, all of that. So it's really important for us to be heard in our anger, in our fear, and our frustrations at a certain point in our lives, and maybe many points in our lives. There's nothing like somebody going, I hear you, I understand. And that's very comforting, and it helps tremendously. And what it usually helps with is that we can now go, okay, I've been heard. Now I can let go of this, or I can not let it stop me, or I can accept the fact that it's not going to be the way I wish it was. And then after a while, we learn to do it for ourselves more and more. Or maybe we just have a couple of friends who help us with it. And we call up and they say, yeah, I hear you, it's terrible. And then we're like, yeah, oh well. This too shall pass, or this is something that I need to do, or whatever it is.
Seems like when things are not going well, or you're in the midst of chaos, like maybe we are right now, it's hard to remember to trust in being, or what it helps when you're kind of lost in whatever is going on.
Yeah, we have to remind each other, huh? I mean, sometimes it just needs a voice in the midst of the hurricane. And then it's a sense of reassurance. And sometimes it takes more. I think there's periods, at least in my life, there's periods where it's a lot of turbulence and a lot of in actuality, I don't know that it's anything other than certain demands being placed on you that normally that you've avoided before, so you haven't been skillful at it. That's how it is for me. It's like the very things that I avoided in my life earlier, when they reappear later in life, then it's difficult because because the capacity to meet them without a sense of, I mean, the capacity to meet them and keep my balance was not developed. If you fall on the floor enough times, you start to develop a balance in that way. So in a way, we think, oh, I got away with it, or I'm lucky I had enough money to not have to deal with that, or I had people who helped me out here, or whatever. But then later on, there's always this knowing or of a fear. A lot of times it's not even, it's that thing where you're clinging to the branch of the tree and you're afraid to let go because you're afraid you'll fall. It's midnight and you can't see a thing, but you're afraid of letting go of that branch, but you're really only this much off the ground. I mean, it's like you don't know that unless you actually enter into it. It's difficult in the whole planet right now with all of the rapid change and it doesn't appear to be a bottom to it all. It doesn't, we don't even know if we'll come back to something like the kind of stability that we had for the last 50, 60, 70 years. Makes you wonder how real it was to begin with. We just had a run, a post-World War II run of something like Cold War stability, depending on where you lived. So a lot of things seem to be threatened. So, but this is life always, eh? It's fertile ground for learning trust in being or practicing trust in being. Or trusting your own process. And learning compassion, and forgiveness. That's another word. Forgiveness. It's another good one.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Viv. Is there more you want to say?
No, I think that's good. We'll see.
Okay. It's sort of like there's a whole, wherever you can let go, you let go. And sometimes if you unwrap a box of chocolates with a cellophane wrap, or a box with a cellophane wrap and you throw the cellophane wrap away, you find it clinging to your arm or your leg with the static electricity. So you let go of it, but it's not letting go of you. And sometimes that happens. And so sometimes you have to just be with emotions, feelings, resentments, fears, feelings of limitation, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of frustration, until they dissolve or they pass or they're seen through. Or you're doing something and you suddenly realize they've been gone for a while. They just disappeared when you weren't noticing.